Hi, this is Patsy with a Z. Welcome to Joy on Paper Live, a program for writers and those who dream of writing, and for everyone who wants to know the story behind the book. And I have a great guest today, David Lewis, and we are talking about the second book in his series, The Secret Churchill Files, and this one is called A Beacon in the Night. Hi, David.
Hi, Patsy. How are you?
Okay, it's nice to see you again. It's so funny. We started taping last week, and then my electricity went out, and it was out for about 5 hours, 6 hours. And when I restarted, this is like sometimes things are meant to be. When I restarted the electricity, of course, the television had to be rebooted, everything had to come up again. And the first thing that I saw there's all these little squares on YouTube, and it was it was for a movie. How Green Was My Valley?
Oh, yes.
Now, I hadn't thought about that movie in years. I hadn't watched it. It's an old movie. And there it was. And here I had just been talking to you about Wales, about how much I love Wales, about your character, Caitrin, in this series that you've started. And there was that movie. And although I was burnt out because of this whole electrical problem and everything that was going on, I just sat back and I watched the movie. And it's from 1941, and of course it's about Wales. It's exactly about the coal country and the coal miners and their life. I don't have you've seen that movie, right?
Oh, yes, several times.
Several times, because you can watch it many times. It's
Hmm.
beautifully done. And
Yeah.
it's funny to know as somebody like you who's been on the photography side of the movie world. They had planned to do that in Technicolor. They had put a budget to do that in Technicolor, and but it was like a 3.5 hour movie, and they didn't have the budget, so they did it in black and white. And I think it's so good that they did it in black and white.
Yes. And they shot it in Malibu.
I know, it's amazing. It's
Yeah.
amazing because I think they shot it in black and white, and of course they were so good in those days. They could create this atmosphere,
Yes.
and
Yes.
it's so beautifully done. And anyone who watches that forever and ever, they will love Wales. They will love the idea of Wales.
Yeah.
So it really, why of all the movies that could have popped up that day, it was that one time. So now we are in the second book in your Secret Churchill Files, and this
Mm-hmm.
one is called A Beacon in the Night. And there are many reasons I love this book and just love your writing because you are so great. You are one of the best writers I've come across since I started my radio
Oh,
program
thank
and
you.
now the YouTube channel. You just write. Your writing's terrific. And
Thank
I told you that, as a matter of fact, when you were on before the first time, I said I felt so thrilled that it was like finding a treasure. I said it was brilliant. I
Thank you.
said it would be award-winning writing, and I was right. You were
Yes.
nominated by Mystery Writers of America for Best First Novel by an American Author, although you were born in Wales. We won't tell that. And that was, of course, for book number one, A Jewel in the Crown, which is a
Hmm.
great thing to happen to an author, any author, but particularly when you get your first novel nominated. That's something special.
Yeah. I was very lucky.
It's more than luck. You deserved it because I remember when I read that book, I started reading it, and I think I told you before that by page 4, I said, "This is an award winning book." I knew it
Uh,
immediately. And I said, "It's unlike you are on a level of writing so far above. It's just amazing." And of course, you created this wonderful character, and I love her. And I think people should just go and watch that movie. Just after that, they'll really appreciate Caitrin because you bring out that part of her, the Wales part of her, the Welsh,
yes.
how she feels and how she thinks comes through in that movie, which, by the way, won 5 Academy Awards,
Yes.
which is quite amazing because one of the other movies nominated was Citizen Kane that year. it beat Citizen Kane. So you can see how great that movie was. And
Yeah.
then you have taken this story. We're following Caitrin Colleen as she will. I'll have you explain it. But the first part of this book takes part. It's partly in Whitechapel, which is a fantastic area of England, of London, and
Hmm.
on the East End. And so tell us about tell and explain to the Blitz because it's a Blitz, and Americans often don't know about the Blitz. They think
Right.
the war started December 7th, 1941, but the war
Right.
started many years before that.
Before that. Yeah. Whitechapel is Jack the Ripper's territory. And it was, at that time, it's where all of the immigrants from the East, from Eastern Europe, came in, and the Irish, of course. So it was really a rough, tough neighborhood. And also, it was close to the docks. So unfortunately, it got a terrible hammering, Germans. And so it's really a hard neighborhood to grow up in, which is where I love the guy in Beacon of the Night. My tough guy, bad guy, good guy hero is a guy called Daniel Teddy Baer, who is the son of Jewish immigrants from Poland, who wants to be nothing more than known as Lord Baer eventually, and he will do anything. Anything in his world to make sure he gets there. And he's a worthy opponent for Caitrin, who is a tough cookie, takes nonsense from no one.
Well, explain the background of Caitrin because she was a policewoman,
Yes,
and in those days that was a big deal to be a policewoman in London.
yes, yes. She started off as one of the first policewomen and was recruited into this organization called 512, run by a woman, and it was working strictly for Churchill. So it was off the books. No one knew about it. And it had a very loose organization, so it could be used to do almost anything. And that's why in the first book, A Jewel in the Crown, her task is to take the crown jewels from London up to Scotland so it can go on a ship to Canada and be safe. And of course, she's coming from a coal mining town, she's a very firm socialist whose greatest ambition in life is to turn Buckingham Palace into a home for retired coal miners or for fallen women, or maybe both. That would be fun. And of course, to spice up the story, she's paired with Lord Hector, who, as being a lord, comes from an entirely different background. And because of the social classes in Britain, particularly at that time, he would be the enemy for her. So they also have to pretend to be married as they're going up through England and staying at country estates. So there's always a friction going on there. And poor old Lord Hector, he is completely outgunned by this woman. And at the end of the day, she saves the world. She saves the jewels. Although I discovered, in fact, that the real crown jewels were buried in a biscuit tin 20 feet under the floor of Windsor Castle. And that's where they stayed until the war was over.
Of course, you take the trip north from London and you go through dozens and dozens of little towns. Most of those little towns I had visited because when I lived
Right.
in England, we had a Cadillac, a white Cadillac.
Oh my goodness.
Yes, and we traveled all over England, and we'd go. I wanted to see all the places not on the motorways, and so
Right.
we went through. I, I was just as I was reading that book, I went back and pulled out my maps, and I could see where we stopped, where there was a pub. I will say that we stopped at a lot of pubs. And
It's hard not to.
that's it. So that was, and the lovely thing, of course, the pubs were so great in those days. Not like they are today. They've lost that community that they had.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's a shame.
it is a shame.
But and one of the fun things in that book where we go through so many villages, and I remember how many I mispronounced as we're going up because they don't pronounce them at all like they look. This is England. It's absolutely insane. You go
Yes.
wherever, or even worse, Scotland, or and Wales. I'm not even going to start with Wales.
Now, Wales is impossible if you're not.
And you do have people. I will say you do have people who will tease you along the way, like they pretend like they don't know. When I like we went to visit the Bronte home, and I'm saying Hayworth, and it's not Hayworth, it's
Mhm.
Howarth or How even. Some of them pronounce it like Howarth, and some pronounce it Howarth, and I'm
Mhm.
saying Hayworth. We're on our way to Hayworth. We're on our way to Hayworth. Oh, which is one of the reasons I find your book so much fun. So in this new one, in A Beacon in the Night, we're in Whitechapel, as you mentioned. It's definitely Jack the Ripper area. It's also where they make the bells, and the Liberty Bell and Big Ben were made in that area.
Yes, yes, yes.
So it's a fascinating, and one of the why I know the area so well is secondhand bookstores. And
Uh-huh.
so many secondhand bookstores in there. And I'm
Mhm.
sure I have at least 300 books that come from that.
From Whitechapel.
Yeah, Whitechapel. Little bookshops, just these tucked away little ones
Mhm.
between a sweet shop and the butcher. And it's just so exciting. So I have at least 1,000 books. No, I came back from England with 3,000 books. Needed a 20-foot container. So,
I'm not surprised.
yes. So you know what it's like. But so tell us when the Beacon on the Hill, now that starts, of course, on at the end of 1940. We're heading into 1941. It's New Year's Eve,
Mm.
and the Blitz is going on. And when we people might hear the word Blitz, but they don't understand that this was months and months of nonstop bombing.
Oh,
7
yes.
months.
And it could start at 5 o'clock in the evening and go for 12 hours. But so what's interesting is that that Hitler had this refused to let the Luftwaffe bomb London. I think because he was hoping that he could somehow get the British to agree to a sort of ceasefire, while he attacked Russia. But unfortunately, what happened was a Luftwaffe bomber dropped some bombs on London purely by accident. And then Winston replied by bombing a German city, and then, of course, all bets were off. And what's interesting, I discovered that at that time, most bombers, British and German, were lucky if they could drop a bomb within 5 miles of the intended target. So that's a pretty big gap. And so in Beacon in the Night, we have German operatives in Britain who have a little thing called a homing beacon, which they put into things like churches and cathedrals and ancestral homes. And the Luftwaffe bomber can fly over. When it locks onto the beacon, it just drops the bomb and it's very accurate. It's based on what Germany called the Baedeker raids. There was a tour book, a guidebook in Germany called the Baedeker book, and it gave a list for all the tourists of all of the really beautiful places in Britain, all the great cathedrals and churches and homes. And so that's what they used to find their targets. And the bad guy I mentioned, Daniel Teddy Baer, is involved. He's being paid by the Germans to bring the beacons into Britain and get them located. So it is Caitrin against the Luftwaffe and Teddy Bear.
And for people who don't know, it is was such a terrible thing what was going on in England at the time. And there was the possibility. People still don't understand that war could have been lost. It could have been
Oh
lost.
yes, oh yes, because the army was defeated after it came out of Dunkirk, and not only that, but they had left all of their equipment behind. And there were invasion plans, and Britain really was on its uppers. It didn't have anything to fight with. And Churchill was really tremendous because he managed to keep everybody at bay till they were rearmed. But the Blitz was awful. There were, I think, something like 25,000 homes were destroyed, and thousands of people. And it was just because the Germans had developed this wonderful, I say wonderful, godly technique. They would first of all drop high explosive bombs, which would blow the roof and windows and doors off buildings. Then they would drop incendiaries, which would go through the gaps and the houses would burn to the ground. But it was quite terrifying stuff.
So we are here with Caitrin as she's navigating through all of the sort of espionage side and also the family side of being a young woman going home. I love the scene. It's one of my favorite scenes where she goes home to Wales. And was that when you wrote that scene? I think so many things from your childhood came out in that.
Yes, because I left Wales in my early 20s and I went to live in Scotland for a while. And then I came to the States. And so it meant I didn't get to go back to Britain, back to Wales very often. So when I did go back, it was really quite an event. It really was going back in time and seeing where I grew up. It was, yeah, I used a lot of what I remember for Caitrin.
And that's why it's such a beautiful, just those few pages alone are written so beautifully. You capture the feeling, you capture whether it's just remembering things for people who never could imagine what a house in Wales looks like. You describe it so beautifully, right down to the oilcloth tablecloth.
Yes,
I
yeah.
love that because most, like, you ask people nowadays, what is that? And they wouldn't know. But when you write it about it, it comes alive. And of course, her mother, who explain her mother. I love her mother.
Her mother was based very much on my mother and my grandmother. I adored my grandmother in that his father had died sometime earlier, so her mother was the rock upon which the family was founded. And of course, Caitrin is very much like her mother and becomes more and more. And they have, because Caitrin is the only daughter, their other siblings are boys. There's a great closeness between these two.
And tell us about her brothers.
Her oldest brother, when she was just really little, was killed in World War One, and the other two, one is a pilot who she will come across several times in the books because he flies agents into France, and her youngest brother is in the Royal Navy. So even though she has a family, they're never around. She's always by herself. And I wanted to make sure that she had to depend on herself. At a recent book signing, someone said, this book is a little darker than the first one. And I said, no, I think it's just that the war is intensified and she has had to grow up a little bit more. I think that's the difference.
Exactly. Because we do feel like we're growing with her as she learns to deal with more difficult things and dangerous
Mm-hmm.
things and taking on a lot of responsibility.
Mm-hmm. I must tell you, the favorite part of this book so far, by far, is when she meets Ian Fleming.
Oh,
And everyone just loves it. And we discovered that James Bond was based on Caitrin Colleen. So I enjoy doing it. I wasn't quite sure I'd get it past my editor, but
well,
everyone seems to.
it's logical. I believe it.
Oh, I did too. I loved it. I thought, yeah, Caitrin, go get them.
That's it. That's the beautiful thing about your writing. Caitrin becomes so real that you really, I forget that she's not real, and I believe that story, and I think that's exactly what happened, and that's how he he came out with those seven. So
Yes.
isn't it lovely when, as an author, you become you're like a god, but you're also like an archaeologist. You're digging deep. You're digging deep into
Yes.
things, and whether it's remembering the oilcloth or coming out with the Ian Fleming connection, it's that depth that you have. That's why your book is both books are so good because they're not just surface writing; they're deep
Mm-hmm.
books, and you have
Right.
a combination of deep thoughts and ideas, but also a depth of knowledge that, well, comes from your writing and your reading over the years.
Thank you. I just finished the 7th book in the series, which is called All the Devils Are Here. And I decided that as the first book starts with Caitrin meeting Winston Churchill, the last book should be she gets to meet Adolf Hitler. And she ends up in the bunker in the last 2 weeks of Adolf Hitler's life. And it's funny because I have a very good friend of mine, Vince, who is my reader. He's an actor, so he understands dialogue. And he said, talking to you about it just seemed to affect you far more than the other books. And I said, I think, yes, because it was the last one, but also the whole war coming to an end, because she tries to save Eva Braun and almost does, but doesn't quite. But I started to feel a little melancholy because I think that for her too, it was, oh, she's coming to the end of the war and she's exhausted. She just really wants to stop and go home, wherever home is. I won't give any more thoughts about.
Don't give anything away, but
Yeah.
this is lovely when you've developed a character who is so real and that people will enjoy following along as she changes. And you're right, she changes and things get more difficult. The war is a terrible cauldron to have to live your life. There's so much happening.
Yes. But you were talking about the Blitz, about people not understanding it, is that I think what people don't understand, and it's hard to understand unless you were there, is there was a big period of the Blitz and then it died off, but it never stopped. For 4 or 5 years, they were always bombing. And not just London, they bombed Birmingham, they flattened Coventry. Coventry was a medieval city. I hope to have seen it now, full of medieval buildings, and they flattened it. They destroyed big parts of Glasgow. I lived in Glasgow, so I know the area. The town of Clydebank, which where they built all the ships, was almost completely destroyed. And it wasn't just confined to London. It was all over the place. But the fact that it went on, I find it hard to understand. It went on for years and years and years.
That's exactly, and I get very emotional when I think of it because when I moved to England in the early 80s, there were still places where you could find bomb holes where
Oh,
buildings,
yeah.
it was very common because it took a long time for England to recover. It took a long time. Definitely up in the Birmingham area. I know I traveled there,
Mhm.
Birmingham, quite a bit. Just and you could still find remnants of where buildings had been bombed, and it
Yeah.
was so many years after the war. But you know,
Yeah. Patsy, you can still do it today. If go on a Sunday morning early when it's quiet, there's no traffic, go to the city of London and drive around and look up, and you'll see these great gouges and pockmarks and holes in the stonework, and that's all from shrapnel from the bombs. So it's still very much there.
so one of the things, of course, for this book and for the series, you had to do a lot of research, and that's fun. And did you visit? They now opened up the area underground where Churchill was and all that area.
Oh, it's such a tiny little place. It's incredibly small. And you think of all of the things that went on there. And as Caitrin says, it smells of cigar smoke and toilets. And because air conditioning was unknown at the time. So it must have been an incredibly uncomfortable place to work in.
And how many books did you have to read for this? You must have, of course, you had
Um,
read many books over the years, but specifically for this.
I'm very unkind to books. I buy used books because I'll try and do this quickly. I buy books and I read them the first time just as if I wanted to read it. The second time I highlight it, and then the third time I transpose all of the things I've highlighted into a computer file. So I can say, if I'm thinking about Caitrin and Birmingham, I can look up my file and find out what's going on there. So by the time I finish, these poor books of mine are really battered and bloodied, but That's how I get my research. I do some online, but mostly through books. I know you're a great Churchill fan. There is a wonderful writer called Martin Gilbert, who's a great writer on Churchill. And he does this wonderful thing, which I wish most people would do. At the top of every page, he puts the year and how old Churchill was at that time. It is such a great tool.
It is, and that one of the things is when you're reading about Churchill, you sometimes it's overwhelming because there is so much information, but you never know. You want to keep reading because you never know where you'll find that little gem, which will make the difference when you're
Yes,
thinking about him.
yes. But my agent said that the reason she wanted to sign me up was because she said for the first time I felt as if someone had made Winston Churchill human and not just a legend. And I tried to because he was a human being. In fact, I think the fifth book is called Winston of Arabia, when he goes to North Africa during the Rommel-Montgomery battles and ends up galloping across the desert at night on a camel with Caitrin. And because actually he did go in the 1920s, he went with Lawrence of Arabia on a camel and his wife, Clementine, to the pyramids. And they started and he fell off. And the Egyptian guide said, "Let me give you a horse. You're probably used to it." And he said in his Churchill way, "I rode out on a camel. I will ride back on a camel." And so he climbed back in and rode it in and out. But that's a great story about him, about Winnie.
Exactly. He didn't do anything by halves. That's for sure. He was
Oh,
he was in it for wholeheartedly for whatever he wanted to do. He did it, and of course Britain was very lucky that he did.
yes. I read his first book, My Early Life, as a biography when I was about 11. And I was fascinated by him because, as we Welsh have mixed feelings about Churchill, because he sent troops down into Tonypandy against the coal miners' strike. You always have to be careful when you ask a Welshman about Winston because they may get an answer you didn't expect. But I also understand what he did. At the same time, he also went to battle with the coal mine owners. So he understood what was going on. But My Early Life is wonderful. I love his. I've started learning Latin. I was taught in high school, but I just got some books to learn Latin. And he has this wonderful thing about talking to his Latin teacher, and his teacher says, "Yes, mensa, o mensa." And Churchill says, "What does that mean?" He says, "You're talking to a table." And Churchill, as only he could do, said, "Why would I want to talk to a table?" I can just see him doing it. You know? So, yeah, My Early Life is a great book. You really should read it if you get a chance.
Oh, I read it many times
Yeah.
over the years. I also read it when I was very young because I was fascinated with England from a young age. I think I mentioned once before that when I was young, when I was like 11, I wanted to run away to England, and
Uh-huh.
wanted to go to Eton.
Oh,
I don't know
you'd
how
never
I
get in.
planned to sneak in, but that was my dream. I wanted a good. I came from northern Michigan, so
Right,
we didn't have any schools like Eton, and I would read about
right.
Eton, and I wanted so much a great education, and so that was my dream to go to Eton.
You should have followed Winston into Harrow, which is also a really good school.
Just reading about his childhood when he was like in Harrow, his memory and his ability to remember lines and lines of poetry
Yes,
was quite incredible. Just I'm in awe when I read about that.
I used it in one of the books. I forget the guy's name, but there was an English general who was a Shakespeare expert, and he and Winston had a battle where one would recite something and the other guy had to say, "Oh, that was from The Tempest," or "That was from Much Ado About Nothing." So it went on for a while, and then Winston was hammering this guy, and he couldn't work out why he didn't know until he discovered that Winston was making it up. He was making up pure Shakespeare on the fly. I thought, this is my kind of guy. And the idea that he would cheat in perfect, what do you call it, cod Shakespeare. That's a great story of the man.
That comes through in the books. I'm glad that you're going to have a book devoted to him because he was special. And your writing, of course, you've read a lot, so that comes also through. And what's wonderful when you have all of these books in the back of your mind somewhere and you pull out little bits here, little bits there, and you can use them just casually. It's not something that you have to like you I get so many books where I know that people have do not know the subject and they've gone to
The
wiki
research,
and
yeah.
they pulled out line for line from wiki. It drives me crazy where a lifetime of reading that makes a difference.
Yes, yes. But also because Wikipedia can be wrong.
Oh yes.
When I lived in Glasgow, we filmed for Cunard. We filmed the building of the QE2 from the time the keel was laid. We go back every 6 months to the time she sailed down the River Clyde. And I happened to look at Wikipedia and it said the QE2 was built in Southampton. So God knows how many people are working on that assumption. Cunard's headquarters is in Southampton, but any Scotsman, a Glaswegian particularly, will tell you, QE2 was built in Glasgow. So you always have to be careful.
Exactly, exactly. So I think you've had lots of fun writing this series.
Oh, it's so much fun. I am so blessed. It has been such a blast.
Of course, for me, I told you this after I started reading the first book that it had to become a series on Netflix. It has to become streaming. They have to
Mm-hmm.
do that. Somebody, I don't has anybody optioned it yet?
Not so far, and I really don't know. I'm no longer in the business, so I really don't know anybody. But I guess if they're smart, they'll catch on.
They have to because this is just so perfect. This because of the fact that you move from all over England and bring Caitrin to Wales, which has a new dynamic every time you have a scene there. It's something really special. Somebody has to pick it up, so you have to do this. And it'll be fun for you because then they'll need you to do the technical advisor.
I could go with that. Yes, I could go with that. That would be fun.
Yeah, of course you'd have to, and that way they can stay true, more or less. Hollywood can do anything into a book. I know. I adapted two books for scripts in Hollywood, and I messed up the books. I had to because they were bad books. It was so funny. I one of the books that I adapted for into a screenplay was a book set mostly in Moscow by an
Uh-huh.
author who had never been to Moscow and who didn't know anything about Moscow and had everything wrong. And so when I wrote the script, of course, I had been to Moscow. I knew this and also to East Berlin. So I wrote everything the proper way, what would
Mm-hmm.
actually. And at the end, when the guy really loved the script and he said, "But you didn't use too much of my book." I said, "I used 200 words."
That's pretty good.
I said, "Be happy. Yeah, be happy." I found 200 out of all his books. I think it was
Yeah.
like 380 pages. I found 200
Mm-hmm.
words of dialogue that it was clever and nice, and I used it. But
Yeah.
everything else I had to make up because he didn't know distances between places. He didn't know the hotels. He didn't know the restaurants.
Yeah. I get very not upset, but I get irritated by bad research because it doesn't take much to figure things out. In the Winston of Arabia, I actually sent Winston with one of the other women to Moscow. And I was in Moscow in 1991 when it was still the USSR. And then I went back again. We were shooting a TV series, so I went back again and saw it for the second time. And I agree with you. You have to know the place. You really have, because otherwise you can end up sticking in big chunks of indigestible research. And it's the little. I'll tell you the little things. For example, I was in New Zealand years ago, and if I were to write about New Zealand, what I would mention is that they have tin roofs and you can hear the rain. on the roof. You wouldn't know that unless you'd actually been to New Zealand. So those are the kind of things I think that make things authentic.
And I would particularly love to see you recreate your mother's grandmother's house, whoever house you based Caitrin's house on. It would be fun.
It's one of the things about How Green Was My Valley, which the Welsh cracked up, is when you see the kitchen's gigantic because of the movie. But the kitchen of my parents' house was 8 feet by 8 feet. That was it. It was tiny. And the other rooms were no bigger. So the rooms are very small.
Oh, those little row houses.
Yeah.
People who have not been to a mining community don't understand, and if they haven't seen a movie like this. Now, I come from northern Michigan, and there we had the copper mines. And
Right.
as a matter of fact, two of my father's brothers were in one of the copper mines when it collapsed. All of his older brothers were in the mines, and he wouldn't go in the mine. You couldn't get him to put his foot in. Now, I remember when years later, and I went up, and now they turn the mines into like museum. You can go into the mine, and you can go down.
Yeah.
He wouldn't go for any. He stayed in the gift shop. There's no way he'd go down. No way. But the mining towns there, the copper, exactly like in Wales, just little houses, row houses, house after house, and the rooms were also little. And they we had cousins who lived in one of those houses, and they had 5 or 6 kids in 4 rooms, in little rooms, and the boys sleeping sideways on the beds.
Yeah, we had an outhouse as long as I lived in it, and there was no hot water till long after I'd left. An outhouse and 2 rooms down, 2 rooms up. I'm one of three boys, and I had to walk over the other 2 beds to get to mine. I didn't have my own room until long after I left home. And the fascinating, very British thing is that the 2 rooms downstairs, the kitchen, as I said, was tiny. Then what the Welsh called the front room, which is the room facing the street, was only used on Sundays, or only used if you had visitors. So in this tiny house, 25% of the space was used just for Sundays or special events.
We had the same thing when I was a kid. We had a very small house. We had a front room. It was really done very nicely. Lovely couch. Everything was really nice. Nice carpet. Maybe 4 times a year. I remember one time it was some kind of a cousin had some kind of a horrible, I don't know, she was running away from her husband or whatever. And she came with 5 kids. And
oh gosh.
My mother had to let them sleep in the front room.
Oh my goodness.
I think she was more nervous about that than anything. She loved her cousin, but to have 5 kids sleeping on the floor in her front room that was polished. She'd go in there and polish all the time. Everything was perfect. And then to have 5 bratty little kids sleep.
Oh, that would be a nightmare.
Yeah, but we called it the front room, and then the other room was a middle room, and that's where we would always be. So
yes.
It's funny. But great memories, and I'm sure you'll get a series. So one of the things, of course, I'm going to be now talking to you as these books are coming out fast. I'm going to get the 3rd one, the 4th one, 5th one. I will be seeing a lot of you.
That's wonderful. That's really wonderful. I enjoy talking to you.
So when's the next one coming out? And we now have a cover, right?
Yes, we have the right cover, thanks to you. It's called Paris Chase, and it doesn't come out, unfortunately, until this time next year. I know. I'd like it to come out sooner, but it seems that publishing is a very deliberate elephant. And I understand. I guess they have to go through what it is they go through. But yes, next year.
But you finished book 7.
Yes.
So what are you going to do then? Start a new series?
No, I'm actually I'm writing my American book called There Was That Summer, which is the story of Libby Custer. Everyone knows about George Armstrong Custer, but the only reason they know about him is because after he died, She made it her life's work to make sure he became an icon. And when I'm fascinated by the 19th century because I'm fascinated by how women were held down and they were told they could. For example, Livy went to a 4-year seminary where she was really taught just to be a good decoration for her husband. She was not expected to work, not expected to look after herself. So when her husband died, she discovered she had a mountain of debts, no money, and she had to go to work. And by the time she died, she'd written 3 best-selling books, was an international traveler, very well-known lecturer, and owned, I think, 4 houses, including one was an apartment on 71 Park Avenue in New York. So I love her story more than his, because I think he was a bit of a well. But that she survived is remarkable. I'm 350 pages in, and I'm loving it. Just
Well,
loving
that's
it.
an amazing story. I don't know about it, and boy, this is a groundbreaking book.
Oh, I hope so. For example, she knew nothing about sex. And when I was researching for the Caitrin Colleen books, I learned that Nancy Astor, part of the Waldorf Astor family, was educated, came from money. When she went to bed with her first husband on the first night, she punched him in the nose because she thought he was attacking her. And she ran screaming from the marital bed and had to be, and she said, "Why did no one tell me? They taught me how to be decorative, but why did nobody tell me? There's no and if love between a man and a woman is supposed to be so wonderful, why didn't you tell me about it?" But it was also sinful, And I know even as a teenager, there was always that feeling that you don't want to hear about this stuff. I was completely unaware of what women were like. So it's gone on for a long time. So Libby fights that, and she fights to. I admire, very beautiful woman, tiny, but she endured. A little like Eleanor Roosevelt. I love Eleanor Roosevelt and Clementine Churchill. One of the books is about those two. I'm fascinated by the struggle women have.
I'm looking forward to that. I'm looking forward to that book. That's
Thank
it.
you.
That's the joy of being a writer. The joy on paper. Once you start writing, you can't stop, and you.
Uh,
It's a great thing to have.
I couldn't say. I spent my whole life as a director of photography, and I was taken all over the world. And I shot all kinds of things. I met all kinds of people. It was an incredible experience. And so now at this part of my life, I am so delighted to be able to do something that's completely different. I do it alone. And sometimes it just catches up my heart because I can't imagine doing anything than what I do. I sit down, I wake up every morning, make coffee, fight with a cat, have breakfast, and I write 7 days a week.
It's a great life. And as I mentioned to you before, the oldest guest on my radio program was 100 years old, and she had just written Eugenia Lovett West. She had just written a book about cybercrime. So
Oh,
that's the
good.
joy
I've
in
got
writing.
so I've got 20 more years to
You,
go. That's
that's
great.
it. You've got 20 more years to go. That's something to look forward to.
I look forward to
Okay.
it.
David Lewis, you are a fantastic author. The new book, A Beacon in the Night, it's just a great read. Anybody who reads this book, you'll want to go back and start at the beginning and then wow, carry through to all 7 books. And David has a nice website. It's davidlewisnovels.com. You can go there. His books are available on Amazon and Barnes and Noble, and any good bookstore has to carry these books, so they should put it right at the front, right on that table, in the front, because it's a great read. And again, thank you for joining me today on Joy on Paper Live. You're going to be back for lots more books because I enjoy your writing. But even if I don't really want to wait until next year, so if you get a movie deal,
I will let you know.
you let me know and you come back and announce it here because I don't get a lot of breaking news. So,
I promise you will be the first to know. After I know, you're next.
okay, you do that and make a big splash because you deserve it and it's going to be lots of fun.
Patsy.
Finally, because I will tell you, they need something new in streaming. Everything's the same old.
Yeah, yes,
It's
yeah,
driving me crazy.
yeah.
I, this weekend I wanted to watch something, and I'm looking at those all those little squares, and I'm thinking, this is the same thing, this is the same thing, this is the same thing. And
Hmm.
I hope you have some input on the casting too, because they are casting some. I'm going to say right now, they don't have a Hollywood eye. They don't have an old Hollywood eye. Have you
Right.
noticed how ugly so many of the people are?
Yeah, and also part of that I think is that with the new cameras, they give an astonishing detail, and with the new lighting, you can record under very, very low light levels, and so in many ways, the art of lighting has disappeared.
Oh, it's completely disappeared. They do not know how to light. Everything is
Yeah.
black. I can't see anything. Whereas if you look at the old movies, just if you just look at the old movies, you see the lighting is so perfect. How green was my valley? The lighting in that
Yes.
is amazing. So
Yes.
you
Yeah.
it's black and white, but when they want light on a face, they light it properly. And
Yeah.
the actors in that movie,
Yeah.
they're all the lighting is so perfect. And really do not let them cast somebody who's ugly. I cannot take I tried to watch 3 different series and the women were ugly, downright ugly. And then some of them, the women are okay, but it's because of makeup. They don't have a natural
Right.
beauty. There is not a Claudette Colbert in any of these. I want one Claudette Colbert. Please give me a Claudette Colbert. In
Yes.
whatever movie she's in, she's
Yeah.
perfect. It didn't matter. It could be a terrible script, but 70 years later, you're watching that film and you're saying, "Oh, this is great. I love this. I love this." You
Yes.
know,
Yeah. I think I'd like to see a young, what's the Australian actress?
don't
What
go to
her name is?
Australia. What happened to Wales? There are some great actresses in Wales.
Oh, yes.
There are some
Oh,
great actresses.
Kate Blanchett. Young Kate Blanchett is just, in the movie Elizabeth, she was just astonishing. Yeah, truly astonishing. But no, there are a couple of really nice young Welsh actresses.
Oh
But
yes.
but you know what they say, the writer is the
No, no, no.
bottom of the
Well,
pole.
actually, you have some power, and if that's one of the things that you say, look, I want to have a casting call in Wales, and you bring in girls from all over Wales, actresses who have that. There's a special look. Welsh people look different. They have something to do with their faces, something to do with everything. And you have a casting call. Wouldn't that be fun? That's a great way to
Uh,
promote a movie. Have a real casting call and find, because they have little theaters in the little theaters in Wales are
mhm.
fantastic. And well, there's many famous Welsh actors. But get
Yes.
somebody who's proper and who's nice and who's going to grow old gracefully. Because these women today who are, they're just, it's all makeup. It's not, there's no natural beauty. And we need a Barbara Stanwyck, a face and a
Yes.
voice.
I will do my best. I
Yeah.
promise you.
Yes, and tell them you want a voice, not just whatever this amalgamation of accents they wrap into women nowadays. They have one voice.
Yeah.
It's not distinctive. Whereas if you like Lorraine Day wasn't the highest top actress in Hollywood, but when you watch her, you know her voice.
Yes.
Lorraine Day, Claudette Colbert, Barbara Stanwyck, all of these people, they had voices, proper
Hmm.
voices. Don't
Hmm.
get these mushed down, I don't know what they are voices.
And part of that is because of the Hollywood studio system. You went in as a child, and you were educated. I know that
But
was
they didn't change the voices of these people. They didn't change. They didn't make them. Judy Garland's voice was Judy Garland's voice. Nobody talked like that. No.
Howard Hawks was well known for taking actresses, and he had a ranch called the Hog Ranch up in Sepulveda Canyon. He would take an actress up there, and he would say, "I want you to shout into the canyon until your voice comes down." And that's a lot of actresses said that they owed their career to him because they he took away that high pitch, and he gave them
Oh
more
yeah, you
of
don't want
a
a high pitch. None of the great
yeah.
actresses had high pitched voices. Unless
Yeah, well,
some.
Lauren Bacall was a famous one that she
Oh,
worked with Howard Hawks and got that wonderful sort of smoky voice.
that's why you can listen to them 70 years later. So you have to put something in your thing that you get some
I'll do my best.
because to make this series successful, you have to have the right Caitrin. If you don't
Hmm.
have the right Caitrin, It's just another series. She's
Yeah,
special. You have to
yeah.
move
No,
on. Okay?
I promise you, I will do my very best. I owe it to you, and I also owe it to Caitrin and to Wales.
That's it. Exactly. Exactly. To your ma'am. Okay. Thank you.
Yes, definitely,
Exactly.
my man.
All right. You take care, and it was great talking to you, and we'll talk soon, okay? Thank you so much. Again,
Okay,
David
Patsy.
Lewis, and it's A Beacon in the Night, a wonderful novel. Thank you so much for joining me. Bye bye now.
Thank you. Bye bye.
Okay.